So Tencent, the gaming giant that already owns half of gaming as we know it, or at least it seems that way, they're thinking about buying more into Ubisoft. Right now, Tencent already has 9.2% of Ubisoft, which is more than the 5% that they started with. And the latest news is that they might just buy all of Ubisoft. And Ubisoft might go for it. Now, this thing has gamers all over the place freaking out because Ubisoft, for all its up and downs, is home of some of the most iconic franchises, like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Rainbow Six. Love them or hate them, they're big deals. And Tencent as well, Tencent. They own part of Riot Games, Epic Games, Activision Blizzard, and like probably the moon at this point. Now, just to be clear, this is all still in the allegedly zone. No one's come out and said that this is definitely happening. Ubisoft has even made a statement saying that they're looking to stay independent. But let's be real, if Tencent comes to Ubisoft with a fat-ass check, Ubisoft might go for it. And Tencent, they're being Tencent. They haven't said much, which is kind of their vibe. They don't talk until they're ready to drop the big news bomb. So for now, we're all just kind of stuck waiting to see what they're actually going to come out and say. But let's be honest here, Tencent's got a pattern. They've been buying stakes left and right like they're trying to complete some secret Monopoly board challenge. If they scoop up Ubisoft too, things will definitely change for Ubisoft. What does it mean for us? Who knows? Microtransactions everywhere, more mobile games. We'll just have to wait and see. So that's where we are in the rumor mill. Tencent's got Ubisoft in their sights, at least as far as we know. That's what it looks like. But we're going to dig into more why Tencent might be interested into Ubisoft and what it could mean. Alright, so Tencent buying Ubisoft, it sounds wild. But before we jump into more speculation, let's talk about why Tencent buying a gaming company like Ubisoft isn't exactly surprising. This is definitely not the first time they've done something like this. Tencent has been out here snatching up game companies like I snatch up Funko Pops. Except they're buying actual companies. Alright, so we're going to start with a little bit of a history lesson here. Tencent has been creeping its way into the gaming industry for years. Think of them as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of gaming, but instead of throwing webs, they're throwing money. Lots and lots of money. One of Tencent's biggest plays back in 2011 is they scooped up Riot Games, the company behind League of Legends. And if you never heard of League of Legends, you might actually live under a rock because the game has been everywhere for over a decade. But Tencent didn't stop there. They bought 40% of Epic Games, the folks who made Fortnite and Unreal Engine, which I'm sure plenty of you know Unreal Engine. Like half the games that are out there right now are made in Unreal Engine. Tencent also owns a chunk of Activision Blizzard, the people who own Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Diablo, you know, those guys. And they also have their hands into PUBG with their investment in Blue Hole Studio. So basically Tencent's out here saying, I'll take 30% of that, I'll take 40% of that, kind of like some weird gaming buffet. So this is where it gets interesting. Tencent doesn't always go for full buyouts. They like to dip their toes in a minority stake, you know, just to get control and influence of things, but not enough to cause like a scene. But they're definitely making a lot of moves behind the scenes. I mean, it's kind of not a bad idea if you look at it from a business proposition. I mean, we got companies like Xbox doing very similar things recently. So this isn't really a bad strategy because this gives them access to markets all over the world without actually needing to like manage every single company. And Tencent's focus isn't just in games. They have focus in social media, movies, e-commerce, and probably more than that. We just, you know, don't really know everything they're doing. They've invested in so many things that they're probably putting their logo on my sandwiches, and I just don't even know it. Don't even get me started on the mobile game world because Tencent saw the mobile boom coming before most of us even knew what an app store was. Their mobile games like Honor of Kings and PUBG Mobile are making a stupid amount of money. So yeah, Tencent's been slowly and quietly building a gaming empire for a while now. They're not exactly being flashy about it. They kind of come in and, you know, do things in a bit of a smarter way. And they're definitely behind the scenes calling some shots without a lot of people even noticing. So now we know a little bit about how Tencent works and, you know, that they are doing this and they have been doing this for a while. We got to ask the question, why Ubisoft? Why go from just owning a piece to potentially trying to own the whole thing? That could shake things up, but let's talk a bit about the situation that Ubisoft is in right now. They've got some big titles on the way like Assassin's Creed Shadows, but we'll see how that goes. But one of their more recent releases, Star Wars Outlaws, wasn't exactly the success that they were looking for. And Assassin's Creed Shadows, that's not really looking that great either, as far as a lot of the news around it. So first off, Ubisoft's stock has absolutely tanked, like down 54% this year. One of the reasons is because of Star Wars Outlaws. They dropped this big open world Star Wars game, which on paper sounds awesome, but in reality, it got decent reviews, but barely made a splash in sales. It's like ordering a pizza, getting excited, and then realizing it's mostly just crust. Ubisoft had high hopes for Outlaws, but it definitely isn't bringing in the money that they were hoping for. So now we need to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Originally, it was supposed to release in November 2024, but now it's been delayed until February of 2025. But why did it get delayed? Apparently they need more time to polish the game. But if we're being honest, people aren't exactly excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm sure there are some people, but most of the word mill that I've heard on the internet is people kind of shitting on the game. So people have been comparing it to Ghost of Tsushima since the first trailer dropped, and not in a good way. It's like Ubisoft saw Ghost of Tsushima and the success that that game had and was like, yeah, we should probably give that a go. But instead of giving us something fresh, it feels more like a knockoff. I mean, the Assassin's Creed formula at this point is exactly that. It's like it's a straight up formula. They pump these games out, maybe not as frequently as something like a Call of Duty or something like that, but there are how many Assassin's Creed games at this point? Then we've got the whole cultural representation issue. The game's set in feudal Japan, and one of the main characters, Yasuki, is a black samurai, which is a real historical figure, which is fine, but there's been some backlash, especially with Japanese fans. A lot of them feel that Ubisoft is just not handling the history very well. Some people even want the government to step into this. I mean, when a video game causes this much drama, you know things are not looking great and kind of off the rails for Ubisoft. And while Shadows is dealing with the controversy and delays, Star Wars Outlaws isn't exactly coming to the rescue. The game's got solid graphics and a huge world, but a lot of players are grumbling about the stealth mechanics, which seem to slow things down too much. Ubisoft is now trying to patch it, but the lukewarm response has already done some damage, so between the not so great reception of Star Wars Outlaws and the meh reaction to Assassin's Creed Shadows, Ubisoft is really feeling the heat right now. Shadows was supposed to be their new big Assassin's Creed release. Samurai, ninjas, feudal Japan. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but now it's looking more like a potential nightmare. We'll have to see. I know this release is definitely going to be a pretty critical one as far as what's going to happen with their numbers and you know, their stocks and shares, but we'll get into a little bit more of that later. And people are worried about the game having the same clunky combat that we've all been playing for literally years at this point. So yeah, that's where we're at with Ubisoft. Star Wars Outlaws is not pulling in the numbers. Well, what do you think? Are these games still on your radar? Are you excited to play them, or are you on the big boat of a lot of people right now and just kind of waiting to see the fire that happens when, you know, Shadows is released? So next we're going to talk about the potential idea of what could happen if Tencent does take over. Could they potentially save the day, or is it going to be even more of a dumpster fire? Because I've seen both arguments all over the place on the internet, so let's dive into that. So Tencent wants a bigger piece of Ubisoft, and you might be wondering, why would Tencent even want more of Ubisoft? I mean, they already own 9.2%. Why do they need more? What's the big deal? But I'm sure if they are planning on doing this, they've definitely got a plan, and it's definitely more than just buying up game companies like they're collecting Pokemon cards. Tencent already owns a solid 9.2% of Ubisoft, but they're looking to get even deeper into the company. But why Ubisoft? Well, one of the ideas is that Ubisoft has a global presence and some massive franchises, to, you know, say the least. Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and the Tom Clancy series. These games have massive fan bases, and Tencent is down with anything that's going to help them level up their global influence. Like we were saying earlier, Tencent already has their hands in major companies like Riot Games, Epic Games, and Activision Blizzard. Adding Ubisoft to the roster just makes sense for them, especially with all of those big name franchises. And I guess adding Ubisoft to that list just kind of makes sense for them, especially with all the big name franchises that Ubisoft has. I mean, it could, you know, potentially make them a lot of money. I mean, Ubisoft's intellectual properties are basically gold mines. Assassin's Creed Shadows has its controversies, but the Assassin's Creed name is massive. And I mean, that could be a very big reason why Tencent would be interested in, you know, getting more of the pie of Ubisoft. And if you know anything about Tencent, they could be looking to do what they're an expert at, which is adding crazy microtransactions and mobile versions of these games. Which if they added mobile versions of some of the Ubisoft games, that could be a massive cash cow for them. If you know anything about the gaming mobile market, it is by far the biggest moneymaker in gaming. A lot of the people like you and me that are into these kinds of games, we're a tiny little portion of the overall gaming industry. So they could be looking to do something like that, adding some of these franchises into the mobile market, and that could definitely make them a lot of money. So one of the reasons that Tencent might be wanting to buy out Ubisoft is that they want to have more of an influence in the Western gaming industry. With China cracking down on big tech companies, Tencent might be looking to spread its wings a little bit more into, you know, a little bit of a more international area. And Ubisoft, it would definitely be a great way of doing that. But I would definitely like to hear some of your thoughts on this. In your opinion, would this be a smart move for Tencent? Or do you think it's just kind of a power play? Or I don't know. But I don't know. What are your whole thoughts on this move here? So what would happen if Tencent actually bought out Ubisoft? A lot of their big franchises like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Rainbow Six, and Watch Dogs, all of those franchises are pretty massive, and they definitely have a solid loyal fan base. And if Tencent did take over Ubisoft, they could step in and make some massive changes to some fairly large games. It could be good changes, or it could be some not so good changes. One of the arguments I've been seeing online is that Tencent has quite a bit of resources. They've definitely got the cash to fund much larger and much more ambitious projects, which could mean an overall polish on Ubisoft games, which Ubisoft could definitely use some extra polish. It's like an argument that I was seeing on an Asmongold stream recently. He was talking about how Ubisoft is known for like kind of pumping out AAA games like every year, when like most other AAA companies other than Call of Duty are, you know, it takes years in between their AAA releases. If they were able to get some of the Tencent funding and actually take their time with their games, it could potentially be a, you know, saving grace for the company. Now imagine if they were actually able to put more funding into those kinds of games and take more time on them. It could potentially revamp these franchises that a lot of people are still definitely into. But the flip side of that coin is that Tencent is huge in live service, huge in mobile. I don't personally have an issue with, you know, mobile. Mobile is what mobile is. People who play mobile games play mobile games. But there have been some insanely huge gaming fails in the live service space recently, like games like Concord. Everyone knows what happened there. But there have definitely still been some successful live service games like Helldivers 2 or Once Human. So they're not all a flop. It's just live service is a very risky thing to get into, especially these days. There's definitely a fatigue that you hear among a lot of gamers of just being completely overwhelmed and just kind of over the whole live service model. And Ubisoft games shifting more towards this model, I don't exactly think would be a good thing. If Ubisoft went more live service, I don't think that would turn good for the company. Some people might be into it, but I think for most people who like to play games like Assassin's Creed, I don't think they'd be into it. I don't think it'd be a good thing. So another concern with Tencent taking over is the creative freedom of Ubisoft. Right now, Ubisoft has a bit more flexibility, and if Tencent did take over, they could potentially lose some of the creative freedoms that they have at the moment. And with someone like Tencent taking over, a lot of speculation is that they could, you know, stick with more of a safe play of just sticking with releasing more sequels or more spin-off games of you know, already known IPs. You know, just kind of doing things a little bit less risky. But yeah, Tencent getting involved could definitely make some big changes to the whole entire, you know, flow that Ubisoft has going these days. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We'll just have to see and, you know, see how it plays out. So, do I think that Tencent is going to try to buy out Ubisoft, I definitely lean on the side of thinking this is definitely a pretty high possibility, especially when considering the stock situation that Ubisoft has been in, you know, all the news and all the drama that Ubisoft has been in recently. I mean, they're at an all-time low with their stocks, although their stock actually has gone up, their biggest jump in a long time since the news of the potential Tencent takeover has come out, which is something else I wanted to get into. I'm actually going to read something from Forbes here. Ubisoft shares surged 31% as Tencent and Guillemot family reportedly mole buyout. Tencent Holdings is considering a possible buyout of Ubisoft Entertainment with the Guillemot family, which founded the French video game publisher Bloomberg reported Friday, sending Ubisoft stock soaring after falling to a decade low. Ubisoft shares increased by more than 31% to just over 14 euros, about 15.35 as of around 11:40 a.m. Friday. Tencent and Guillemot Brothers, a holding company run by members of Ubisoft founding family, have held discussions about acquiring Ubisoft. Though those considerations are at an early stage, people familiar with the matter told Bloomberg. Both companies are considering taking Ubisoft private if a transaction does go through. Tencent, which purchased nearly 50% of Guillemot Brothers in 2022, holds 9.2% of Ubisoft's net voting rights, or power in voting by shareholders, while the Guillemot family has about 20.5% according to Ubisoft's latest annual report. Ubisoft did not immediately respond to a request for a comment from Forbes. So their stocks have gone up quite a bit since this news has broke. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I would say that alone is probably a good sign that Ubisoft might look at this as a potential reason to actually go through with letting Tencent buy them out. But I do think it is very highly possible that this is something that's going to go through. But it is speculation, and I would like to hear what you guys think about this. Definitely let me know what you think about this whole situation. Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think it's going to be a good idea? Do you think it's going to be a bad idea? What do you think would happen to the Ubisoft franchises if Tencent were to buy them out? And yeah, let me know all that down in the comments section, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out.